Well, we're going there. This isn't a Lego set. I just want to make that fully clear. And I ended up getting this set off of AliExpress. It was $1 shipped using a welcome deal. Like, it was worth it. I'm not going to even hide that fact from you. However, that said, is it a good set? No, not really. I mean, the official Lego one isn't really my favorite. I think the Gali is definitely one of the better Uniter sets, but I'm biased. She does wear my favorite of the Uniter masks. And ultimately, it's a fine set. You know, it doesn't do anything super spectacular. That said, though, this knockoff version here, do I think it's worth it? As I said, yeah, kind of. I mean, for $1, just about anything's worth it. Parts alone here, I think you get more than $1's worth of stuff. There are some good parts in here for what it's worth, but there are a lot of bad parts. It's bad. It's not great. Notably, axles, Technic connectors, things like that. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe. It helps out the channel tremendously. But of course, going back to those connectors, you'll notice she does not have her little twirly blade, whatever the hell it's supposed to be on the official model. Not because those parts weren't included. In fact, I don't think she was missing any pieces. However, it just wasn't a great set of connections. The axle, I could not get it all the way through the tri-connector here. I just opted to leave it off. No worries there, right? However, that said, there are some other axles. There are really a lot of things in the set that are too tight. Notably, the eye stalk, which is not in here. Now, the set actually does include a very cool eye stalk in that it is not the trans light blue. Rather, it's sort of a proprietary color, not quite as dark as Lego's trans dark blue, but darker than trans medium blue and still fluorescent. I actually already own one of these in this color, thanks to Zion Tyros. By the way, shout out to them as well. I shout them out often. They have a worthwhile set of things that they do. Anyway, that said, though, it is still an interesting piece. However, on these, notably, at least some that I have acquired, the axle holes on these are quite tight. I often would recommend going in with a drill. I know this seems really wild. It's not a terribly laborious process, thankfully, but just literally, if you get a bunch of these, just drilling out the hole there. You're not drilling out the axle itself, like it's still going to hold axles. If you're just going in there enough, I'll make maybe a separate video on it. I've talked about it on the server in the past. Link in the description for that. That said, though, I just opted not to throw it into the model because, again, that axle for the eye stalk is tight. The set also does, in fact, include 2 masks, as you would expect. However, both are painted, and it's kind of peculiar. This mask right here is trans blue, notably the similar sort of trans dark medium blue. I don't know exactly what to call this color, and I have not tested if this fluoresces, but those eyes do, so that's at least nice. But of course, it is painted with this silver paint. The paint application on this is horrendous. It's not good. But notably, if you can remove that paint, you have yourself in hand a solid trans dark blue, or almost trans dark blue Gali mask. That's not a bad thing, right? Compared to the official version of this mask, the color is similar enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's notably lighter in color, but not by that much. And I think even if you compared it back to like the original Gali Mata mask, you'd be in for a pretty good time. It's overall a fine mask, and the details on it are quite good, although the mask itself looks to be ever so slightly narrower than this version. I can't confirm that. I mean, I've looked at the piece directly against this. It is narrower, but that could be a shipping problem. That could be a shrinkage problem. Who honestly knows? However, it does seem consistent with both versions of the mask included in the set. And it is worth noting that, as you can see right there, this mask is painted sort of drum lacquered silver before it is then applied with an azure-ish kind of color paint. It's not great. The application on it, again, kind of terrible. It's clear these paints were not meant to go one above the other. Like, this is not a primer lacquer there as well. But also, it doesn't really match the dark azure color in the set. Like, it's respectable, but it's not great. And noting that this is drum lacquered as it stands made me think, yeah, it's probably just another trans blue mask, until I held it up to the light and realized, no, it's not. It's trans green. Why? They have a trans blue one already. I'm not complaining, by the way. More colors, yes, please. And it is worth noting that from this brand, because I wanted to try out more than one set, I also got Liwa as well. Not going to be in this video, otherwise it'd stretch on too long. But yeah, trans bright green masks. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, we're going to get 2 of that. No, it's trans blue. What? Okay, very silly. Again, not complaining at all. Always good to have two different colors masks. Of course, my preference here would be a solid bright green and a solid dark azure mask, right? Like, of course, this is my favorite of the Uniter masks, so having one that doesn't have the silver top would have been phenomenal. This is not the case for this mask, but still really fascinating to even be able to get masks like these in colors they were never meant to come in the first place. Ultimately meaning that, yeah, you get some recolors in the set, but it's under that paint, and you have to be able to remove that paint. I'm running some tests now. I'll get back to you on how well that works. Going back to the figure, then, we take a look at one of the other very notable pieces from the Uniter sets, and it is the armor here. So I'm going to go ahead and try and separate this character's weapon very quickly just to give you a bit of a closer look. And in fact, I will take the armor off of the figure because that's the right way to do things, right? And it is worth noting that it is different from Legos. Notably, there's a black outline around the details on this. I like that. However, I don't know that I like it on this piece specifically. My main gripe with this armor in and of itself is that it's overly detailed, and honestly it also lacks connections. It's kind of a two sides of the same coin, right? It's an overly detailed piece, and having the black outline there further adds to the detail. However, I cannot argue with the fact that it just looks very crisp. The printing on this is actually decent. That said, however, this company clearly doesn't do anything to actually prevent the image printed here from being damaged. There's no plastic peel off to protect it. It's not packaged in a separate bag, which ultimately means that the printing is going to suffer, which sucks. Because if you are a fan of these prints, they're pretty good, and then they're just scuffed by shipping and manufacturing and packaging and all this other crap, where honestly, if you just put this in its own bag, or again, had a little plastic, just sheet you could peel off of it, this would benefit greatly. It is worth noting that the orange on the piece, now this one here is the knockoff, the orange on the piece is not orange here. It's kind of its own proprietary color. It's similar, I want to say, to dark tan, but it's not the same. It's darker than that, but it's lighter and less vibrant than dark orange. So I really have no other color to compare it to. And it's also worth noting that the silver details off to the sides of the Nuva symbol in the center here are actually more of a yellow, kind of pale yellow shade, which I like. If you are a fan of the yellow on the Gali Master set, then this could kind of work for that. However, there is one thing I have to sing praise for, and this is something I've seen kind of across the board for these bootleg sets as well, is the base printing is exceptional here. The Dark Azure is a great match for Lego's Dark Azure, and it's really crisp, notably more so than Lego's. I have another knockoff. In fact, I have it right here, so I can just show you. I have this version of Pohatu, which I very barely changed to add a little bit of dark tan back into his color scheme here. But notably, this torso cover here is a knockoff. And the reason for that is because the dark tan base on it is brighter. It's more crisp. It's more pronounced than Lego's. Lego's, it doesn't have enough opacity to, or I guess lack of opacity. No, that's the right word. Opacity. It doesn't block the background, the base color enough. Right? So the fact that a knockoff company is able to do that, at least, is good, even if ultimately the printing does end up suffering. Now, it is worth noting that the molds here are slightly different. Most notably, the hard details on this, like where hard edges might meet, are a little bit softened on this piece, which I actually kind of like because it helps to mute some of the detail a little bit, making the piece look overall a little less detailed than it ultimately is, which helps to contrast those black lines, which make it look more detailed. I'm getting ahead of myself here. It's a decent piece, and notably, the color is slightly different as well. If you're not familiar with knockoffs from whatever manufacturer this is, I've had experience with it before, but it's often marketed under several brand names, and in this case has no brand name at all. The shade of silver is a bit brighter. It's actually much more akin to classic Bionicle silver from like 2001 through 2006 versus the flat silver from Hero Factory, right? So ultimately, the printing and the armor piece are decent, assuming you have slightly better luck than I do, because yeah, mine has a little bit of damage in the printing, which is unfortunate, but again, mileage is going to vary there, right? Now, it is then worth noting that the armor on this, as I mentioned, there are no marbled pieces in here, so the armor is also fully transparent blue, and it looks, I don't have any pieces in front of me this color, but it does look to be a pretty good match for Lego's transparent light blue as well. So again, if you want to go through the effort of removing that printing, follow along on the Discord to see how my progress is on that, then that's actually a really exceptional use of those parts, because ultimately having versions of those in solid transparent colors would be nice. Same is also true for the weapons as well. I am a fan of these weapons ultimately, if for the fact that from Lego they come in a bunch of different colors, but they're always marbled with silver. Not a bad thing in and of itself, but if you'd like to use this piece without the silver, you're out of luck until these pieces come along, because this piece, the base color of it, is not silver. You think it would be, you know, generally it would be cheaper for them to manufacture one color and then paint it a bunch of different times, but no, they manufactured it in the blue color and then painted, in this case, kind of a gray on it. It's supposed to be silver. It is more silver on the green version of the weapon, but it just isn't metallic as it should be, which is fine because I plan on removing it. Now, Gali obviously only comes with one of that sword, but in terms of the color match here, it's pretty good. I want to say it's on par with what Legos is. Legos, of course, have a little bit of bleed from the silver color in them, meaning that they're usually a little darker than base colors of that piece. That's a lot, basically saying that this is supposed to be medium azure, but it might vary slightly from Lego as an official piece. This version here is a little bit darker than Lego's medium azure, but it's passable. It is by far close enough to Lego to be usable. And the same is also true for the bright green swords from Liwa, in which case Liwa comes with two. So that's actually a pretty good deal, right? Because you're getting these weapons. If you go and get, you know, the Lava Beast, does it have orange weapons? 4 of those with just black paint on it. Yeah, from what I have seen, it does. That's pretty cool. Moving back into the character now, as I mentioned, the eye stalk being a proprietary shade of transparent blue. The same is also true for these shells as well. They're not as dark as Legos, so that gives you a new color for those parts. And since we never got those in a transparent medium blue of any kind, that's actually pretty useful. And because it's a thinner plastic, it's notably different from the other transparent dark blues that Lego has made. Again, comparing it against Gali's mask, for example, you can definitely see the difference in color there. It's not as light as transparent medium blue, and the overall mold is fine. It could definitely be better, but it's not the worst I've ever seen. They're fine. Again, I've had experience with this brand, this manufacturer's shell pieces, and I haven't had any real issues with them. The Dark Azure does look to match Lego's near perfectly, which is always good to see. And of course, you get 3 of the 4 length shells in the set in that color. Again, fantastic pieces. So interestingly, this set came with a chain you had to build yourself, which is weird. Don't know how that happened, but all right. And it is worth noting, lastly, before I end this video, that in terms of the Technic connections, the sockets also tend to be relatively tight. Probably better than having them loose, of course, but, you know, it is worth at least remarking on. And lastly, I thought I brought it in here, but I guess I didn't. The Uniter piece is actually good. In fact, it's probably the best piece in this set, just out of the box. You don't have to do anything to it. You don't have to remove any paint from it. Because it is a lighter shade of silver, I think it would go better with your more classic Bionicle MOCs, where you're using shades of silver that are closer to this. And it is worth noting that the details on it are all crisp. It is a slightly different mold from Lego's official piece, but if you didn't know that, you would never know that. The parts quality feels good. It's a hard plastic like ABS. I have no idea what this brand uses, of course. And the details are all crisp. They're all very fine. The axle connections, as I tested with official Lego pieces, also exceptional. So in that effort, if you will, I think this set is actually really good. If you are a fan of the piece of Unity and you want to get a bunch of them, Tahu and Kopaka are obviously going to be your best. Kopaka comes with 3 of them in silver from this brand, because they sell Kopaka and Melem separately. And then Tahu comes with, I believe, 3 in gold as well. I have not tested this brand. Well, I've had pieces from this manufacturer in gunmetal. The gunmetal does seem to match Legos, so again, you could get this piece in gunmetal as well from the Kitar Creature or from Umrak the Hunter, obviously, and I have no experience with the pearl gold from this brand, so I cannot comment on that until I have other pieces from this brand. Do I plan to buy any more? Maybe. We'll see. For $1, you really can't go wrong. I think it would benefit the channel to at least place one more order, but honestly, we'll see. They did come in a pretty timely manner. I believe the quote time on them was about, I want to say 2 weeks, but I didn't exactly time it. It said for the 26th. Today is the 23rd. They arrived today, so that works out for me. And notably, lastly, I also went ahead and picked up Skull Basher as well. Wanted to go ahead and point out very quickly the difference in color in the purples, this purple being a knockoff purple that I tend to like more than Legos, and it's pretty good here as well. And of course, notably, the print on these torsos is decent. It's actually quite good, except for the fact that Lego's official print has a magenta used in it, which kind of shows up on camera, not super well. This print just lacks the magenta entirely, this one being the unofficial version of this piece. So yeah, I guess I do have pearl dark gray here. Interesting kind of color too. It's a little more goldish than Lego's current, which is more blue. So this might actually match closer to classic gunmetal if that's the case. No clue. Haven't bought any of the newer sets from this brand like that, but I went ahead and got that one specifically for Onua's mask. That'll probably be a separate review in and of itself. So finally, to get all this over with, do I recommend these sets? I think that, yeah, as a novelty, these are actually pretty cool, all things considered. Note that I did get Liwa as well. As I mentioned, the printing on here is definitely worse than Gali's is. Passable for sure. If you're somebody that likes battle scars, this will definitely work for that. And again, colors here slightly different. The yellow is a lot more muted here. And honestly, also the green, specifically on the stomach portion, is a slightly different shade. It's a little more bluish green here than it is up here, which is quite bizarre. And no yellow on the top at all, which I find quite fascinating. Or at least, if there's yellow, it's only in those little spikes and it's minimal. It's, in fact, when I hold it directly like this, I can't see it. I have to kind of tip it forward before I start seeing the yellow color show through, which is interesting. So if you're not a fan of Liwa having yellow in his Uniter form, this might actually be worth picking up. The dark bluish gray looks good. It's just the actual quality of the printing. Unfortunately, those scuffs, if they didn't scuff them, because the rest of it is excellent, these would be pretty great pieces overall. No matter what I think about the overall parts design, that's a Lego problem, not a knockoff problem. Okay, so that's it for this one. Again, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel tremendously. You have no idea how much that helps as well. You can also check out the Discord if you want to keep up with these guys, because I will be continuing to talk about them over on the Discord. Link for that is in the description. And of course, if you want to help to contribute to wallet recovery, even though $1 in this case is not the worst, Patreon is linked down in the description. You can find Instagram down there as well. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.